Yes, welcome back to another video. Hope you're good. Hope you've been practicing. Right, we're going to have a go at doing something a little bit larger than a glass tumbler. So let me just put my set of pencils up there. I've picked out two pencils to do this sketch with. And the first one is letter F in terms of sketching pencils, which is one of the lighter shades that you're going to find within the box. And I'm going for a 4B, which is the darker lead. It's a bit trial and error. I'm not quite sure. There are a few darker leads in here, so I'm just going to go with a dark one anyway. I just want it to come up as though it's in the shade and the difference between dark and light. So let's just pop that over there for a minute. Keep that rubber because we might need that in a minute. And yeah, as I say, we're going to have a go at this. It's going to be, well, I'm hoping it's going to turn out looking like a watering can. You know, them things that you have in your garden. Anyway, we're going to go for it and give it a go. And as I say, practice makes perfect. Well, not always, but it can't do you any harm, can it? And I've got my little A5 pad, so I'm going to have to keep it quite small, this. But you'll get the idea that you can fit, you know, massive looking objects onto a page of A5, as long as you do it small enough. Anyway, let's kick off. And for myself, when I come to do sort of a drawing like this, I'm really looking at, if obviously you've got the thing in front of you, you're looking for the major shapes that you can pick out as to give you the good guide as to where to start. Now, well, I'm sort of, obviously you can't see this watering can, but I've got a picture sort of in my mind, and I'm just gonna draw what I feel that I can actually see. So I'm just going to do it fairly lightly. I'm hoping it comes out on the video okay. But I'm going to start with something that looks a bit like, hopefully, a tin of soup. Or, you know, the tin shape of like baked beans, that sort of thing. That's going to be the main body of the watering can. And then obviously then the inside of it is going to be sort of like a rounded nature, and this may vary a little bit, but let's just go for it anyway. Bring it round like that, something like that. So there's going to be a bit of a lip here, because I'm just going to sketch that out. And then there's going to be sort of this type of thing going on, where this is the top. Obviously there's going to be a middle band sort of around here, just so we can get the main sort of shape going. And then there's going to be another sort of lip around there. And just for completeness sake, I'm going to say that obviously there's a handle, which I'm just going to sort of lightly pencil in somewhere around there that looks like that. Okay. And I'm going to put the other major shapes in as well that I've got in my mind. So there's going to be the sort of spout that the water comes out of. Now again, I'm just going to sort of do this, and hopefully it doesn't look too bad. And I'm thinking, how long might that be? Let's go with that, shall we? It's going to be a bit of a spout, if you like. And then something along them lines. And as I say, you're only practicing, so don't worry if you don't get it sort of first time, because none of us do. But It's just about getting used to, you know, the size of the object that you're dealing with. I'm going to put something along here as though there's a stabilizer type of thing, which I have seen on certain ones. Something like that. So that's attached. Gives it more stability, and then we'll just leave that part as it is for now. And then there's not going to be a great more deal to it, to be honest. I'm just going to put a little rimmer in around the bottom, something like that, to add a bit more detail. And then the final thing really would be the handle, which can always be tricky when you're doing things freehand. So let's hope I don't need the rubber for this. And I'm just thinking, how big will it be, sort of thing. Well, it might be something like that. Let's just sketch it in and see how that looks. How's that? Not too sure. And if you're not, if you get your gut instinct says, maybe not, just have another go. I'm just thinking, should it be more sort of rounded? I'm probably just going to go and do what I did before. Something like that. So that gives you the sort of gist of where we're sort of going with this thing. And then when you come to do your shading later, it's going to be a mixture of light and dark. And to add sort of perspective to it, what you could do, but you don't have to, this is personal preference, is to obviously draw it as though it's on something. So you've got a sort of a bit of a background. And then it could be on, I don't know, a wooden table or something that's got the wooden slats. So it adds a bit more. I'm just trying to get them looking tight, sort of equal. And you can sort of tail that off as and when you feel you should. And then once you've got your sort of picture then, and you're sort of happy with the sizes overall, then you can think about adding your extra detail in terms of the shading. So if you were going to do something, I've got the pencil now, the 4B, which is the darker shade, one of the darker shades. Let's pretend that the sunlight is, let's say it's outside and the sunlight is basically following the direction of this arrow here. So areas around here are going to be sort of white, and then we can start to add in a bit of shading as it gets darker. There's going to be a really darker shaded area over here behind where the sunlight's not sort of touching. So as you have your shadow when the sun comes out, every object will have its shadow as well. So it's just a case of how far do you sort of want to go with that and make it a little bit lighter as we get further away. So that's the sort of idea. And then if there are any really dark areas, then this is the time now to sort of concentrate on those. So I'm going to go for this part here, which is basically the inside where you put the water. And again, it's putting different levels of pressure on the pencil. And in terms of shading, well, it's pretty much down to you, really. There are obviously different means, and you can sort of go with lines, to make shading, you can sort of colour the edges. Just adding a bit more depth to it. Sometimes try not to think too much about how you do the shading and just let your hand sort of guide you. Because there's no right or wrong in terms of what you're going to put on here, because who's going to know? I think the idea is really just to try and get to a stage where if you did show it to someone, that they'd have a pretty good idea about what it was. I suppose that's the minimum we can aim for. If you've ever done any cross hatching, which is the shading bit where you're going like that with a few lines and then going across the other way, you could incorporate some of that. And then we've got the larger areas to fill in. And it could just be doing very big shading blocks. And if you want to go back to your light pencil, we'll just ignore that big van that's outside. Hopefully he's not coming here. And then we can just try and fill in a bit more detail with it. Okay, well, looking. Let's go for a bit more dark on the outside there. So I'm hoping you get the idea. You're slowly sort of building up how this thing looks. And if you want to break from the main drawing, then you can obviously go into other mode, which is just adding a little bit more detail to the surroundings. Depending on how much time you've got as to how well you want to draw these lines in, but it gives you the idea. Eventually that will sort of tail off, and then we'll make that a little bit darker there. And depending on how much you want to spend on this, you can then sort of go into a little bit more detail, adding one or two extra little things in there. So I'm hoping that our final version actually looks a bit like a watering can, and it's not been a complete disaster. because they are fairly tricky to draw. I've got to say that, because some of these shapes and things, when you've got to do them by hand, they're not the easiest thing to get first time. So get your trusty rubber ready. But as I say, there's various versions of watering can, and it's all about practice really. And obviously in this case we've got our sketching pencil set to use, which will give us more flexibility over how the final product actually looks. But I would always start off and just try and use a light and a dark pencil, because obviously you've got lots of choices there. But yeah, have a go at that, or a garden implement that you can sit and easily sketch. Okay, good luck with that one. See you on the next one.